So Ohio State has fired Chris Holtmann. Chris Holtmann was 30-30 over the past 2 seasons in Big Ten play. He was 9-25. And I just want to say one thing before we start talking about this stuff and all the things that are going on with it. Chris Holtmann is widely regarded as one of the best character head coaches, one of the nicest and kindest head coaches to media and guys like that out there. So this is, like I've said in previous podcasts, it is probably time for Chris Holtmann to go. I know the Ohio State fan base is excited that they're moving on to somebody else, but it should be noted that Chris Holtmann, just a really, really good guy, and we really do hope that he lands on his feet somewhere, whether that be at a smaller school like a Gardner-Webb that he was at before, or somewhere like in a Big East school, maybe a Butler or something like that. Obviously, Butler has Thad Matta right now, but just something like that where he can be on his feet and land somewhere that is good for him. Tim, we'll start with you first. What was your reaction to finding out that Chris Holtmann was fired from Ohio State?
Yeah, I think the timing was pretty curious, but it was clear that Chris Holtmann wasn't going to last after this offseason. I know he specifically thought that he was going to not only make it through this season, but he thought he was going to get 1 year under new athletics director Ross Bjork. So the timing wise, it doesn't bode well for Ohio State. Yes, they get out in front of it. They get to be kind of first in line to go start putting out some feelers with agents for, potential coaches and things like that. But the fact of the matter is that Ohio State right now has no coach. Obviously, Jake Diebler stepping in. He's not going to be the head coach next season for Ohio State, and no one's going to want to commit to this program until they find a head coach. And at the same time, players can now transfer out because there's a coaching change, so players can get a head start on portaling as well. So the timing not good for Ohio State, but it was clearly the decision was going to be made that Chris Holtmann would not return this year. So it 100% makes sense. I think the timing is a little odd.
So let me get this straight. So do you think that players will be able to transfer here in the middle of the semester? Do you think that's something that they'll look at doing, or do you think it's more likely at the end of the season we'll probably see some more of those transfers at that time?
Yeah, technically the transfer portal can open for players, 30-day. There's a 30-day window with these with a coaching change. And what Ohio State fans need to remember is that players do not commit to logos. They do not commit to universities. They do not commit to cities. They commit to coaches. So with Chris Holtmann being gone, very, very likely that Bruce Thornton, Roddy Gale, Felix Okpara, the Buckeyes' best players, are at least going to entertain the option to go find a new place to play next season. So, of course, on the flip side, it means Ohio State can potentially rebuild quickly and grab some players of their own out of the transfer portal. But 100%, there's 2 players on the roster right now who I would say, yeah, there's probably a high degree of likelihood they'll be back next season. And one of their 2 incoming freshmen, I think, will 100% be in. Other than that, this is going to be a completely new look roster next season.
Wow, that's crazy to think about. Rajiv, what was your reaction to seeing Chris Holtmann be let go earlier today?
Yeah, I mean, from an outsider of Ohio State in general, I think first of all, I agree with what Tim said about the timing. I never like to see mid-season firings unless there's an actual clear plan of succession in place where, if they really want Diebler to give him basically an audition and see if they're going to hire him, but you guys are saying he's not going to probably be the guy. So in that case, I think it is a little strange. And yes, the transfer portal is going to be a problem. I'm sure Wisconsin's hopefully eyeing up some guys as well. But I mean, ultimately, the guy had a great start, when he came in, and you guys, I think, had maybe Elite 8 with him, right? Am I right about that? Or
no, he never got past the second round.
Okay, all right. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. But the last 2 seasons are they've been down in the dumps, and Ohio State has a killer instinct, right? I mean, Ohio State is every other program in the Big Ten looks up to Ohio State as far as obviously on a football level, but as an athletic department, there is a need for success. So, I think the decision to get rid of him is probably right and what's right for Ohio State. Timing of it's a little strange, but I completely agree about what you said about Chris Holtmann. Now, while I don't know the details of how nice of a guy he is from a coaching perspective, I absolutely think he will land on his feet. Definitely, like you said, Big East, I think that could definitely happen. But he's a good coach, and he's going to hopefully find success at his next place. And it'd be really interesting to see where Ohio State goes from here, how many players they lose and can retain. But really, the next phase of Ohio State's there, and it'll be fun to see what happens.
Yeah, no, a big thing for me is just seeing that Chris Holtmann lands on his feet. I'm confident that Ohio State will be fine and they'll make a good hire here. Ross Bjork is coming in, and I watched a little bit of Gene Smith's press conference after Chris Holtmann was let go earlier today. So, and I know that he is basically giving everything to Ross Bjork to be able to hire the new guy here. Gene said he would assist him and give him all the help he can possibly give him. But make no mistake, this will be Ross Bjork's hire for Ohio State. And with Ross Bjork, who seems to really want to get somebody good in here and really make sports a priority, I think that's going to be a thing that he's really going to focus on. Tim, what are some names that you would think of that could possibly be an Ohio State future head coach?
Yeah, I've seen 20, 30 names thrown out there. Essentially, if they've had any kind of success, they are in the mix, essentially, is what fans think. I think the kind of the top of the list names that you can think of are probably Mick Cronin and Nate Oates. Those would be the top two that Ohio State would likely pursue. Mick Cronin is from Cincinnati. Obviously, he brought Cincinnati up before moving to UCLA. Mick Cronin is fed up with how things are going at UCLA, fed up with the NIL situation at UCLA. UCLA just lost Chip Kelly for a very similar reason to Ohio State. So I think Mick Cronin may not necessarily be eager to leave, but if the right opportunity were to come, I think that he could be a potential fit. So Mick Cronin for sure. Nate Oates kind of feels like your dream candidate for sure. I'm not sure that he would be all that open to Ohio State. I feel like he's a better fit for Michigan, but those are some names that I would think of. And then kind of as you go down the list, there's a couple other names as well. I think Buzz Williams, just because of the connection with Texas A&M, I think that could be a name that Ohio State would consider. You got Sean Miller at Arizona. That would kind of be that second tier. Greg McDermott as well are some bigger names. And then you've got guys who, will come from the mid-major ranks that I think people have got a lot of interest in. But fans have got to be careful. Ohio State picked up Chris Holtmann, obviously from Butler, where at that time it was not a Power 6 conference or Power 6 program. It was technically a mid-major. So I would prefer that Ohio State go take someone who has actually done it in a power conference setting at this point. But a lot of names have been thrown out there. Those are a couple that I would say would be the top tier A-list candidates for the role.
Tim, could you see a possible return of Thad Matta, who is doing a pretty good job at Butler this season after having a losing season last year? But this Butler program was obviously not in a great situation when he got there, but they're obviously improving. Could you see a possibility of Thad Matta coming back to Ohio State?
Yeah, I really don't know. By the time that this podcast got started, Thad Matta was long gone from Ohio State. So I've never spoken with him. I have no idea what the sentiment is, but the connection is that he used to coach there, and the way things fell out for Thad Matta at Ohio State were very, very bad. So for him to want to return to Columbus, yeah, it may be a feel-good story, but there's no connection. Ross Bjork doesn't know Thad Matta as far as I'm aware. The connection is simply that he used to coach at Ohio State, and he's done a good job at Butler. So I wouldn't be surprised if Thad Matta is not in the mix here.
Interesting. All right, we got Anthony here, so we're going to bring Anthony in to join us here. There we go, and look at that. Everybody's in their nice right little box. How you doing, Anthony?
Good, fellas. Sorry I was a little bit late.
No, glad to have you here. So this next question is for you, Rajiv, and you, Anthony. Are there any players on this Ohio State roster that you're looking at and you're just kind of licking your chops and you're like, man, this would be a really nice guy to add to our roster, or this is going to be a hot commodity that might go to another Big Ten roster somewhere else? Anthony, because I know you're always tweeting out, is this guy for me and stuff like that on Twitter. We'll let you go first. What are your thoughts about potential players from Ohio State leaving and who you would like to see maybe be added to your roster?
For me is one of the best running bits, by the way. The little, whatever. So first off, I'm gonna step in for Rajiv here and say, Wisconsin, you already got your all-star transfer in AJ Storr, so you guys could just buzz off in this scenario. I can't remember the last time, if Tom Izzo actually used the portal mid-season. He's pretty sparing with how he uses it in general. So I'd have to go way back to remember the last time he did that. Obviously, I'd love to see a pure scorer like Roddy Gale or Bruce Thornton, but I know that everyone's going to be after them. It's, more options to space the floor. Although Michigan State has, figured out their 3-point shooting a little bit better, sometimes their offense can stagnate a little bit. So, offensive creators like that could never hurt. In general, I think the obvious answer is going to be Felix Okpara. Just MSU has a hole at center. Maybe they're getting a little better play from someone like Carson Cooper, but I mean that I would say more options at center, the better, right? We have an open scholarship. Let's use it if we can.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And that's honestly one of the guys I fear losing the most. Before we move to you, Rajiv, we do have a casual Big Ten Kent who's with us every now and then. JR brought the stars out tonight. Yes, we did, Kent. Just for you with this big episode, we did bring out the stars here. Rajiv, who are some guys that you're looking at on the Ohio State roster? It's like, man, I really hope this guy enters the portal, and Greg Gard, looks and gives him a look.
Yeah, it's definitely Felix Okpara because we need a backup five. I mean, Stephen Crowell is good, but he's not great. He's not as physical as a guy like Okpara can be and is. He's had 59 blocks this year, by the way. Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's the guy. And our look, I think anyone is going to be happy with Bruce Thornton because he's very efficient and he can do. He's very creative guard, which is great. We just don't need that right now. We've got Chucky Hepburn. We have John Blackwell. We've got Daniel Freitag coming in next season. We've got plenty of twos in Klesman and Asijan. So I feel like at this point, we really just need Okpara, and I hope we go after him because that's literally the exact kind of player that we need. Someone who is a decent rim protector, who has some size and can play a physical five. And we just need cover at that position, which we don't have right now.
Wow. Sounds like Felix Okpara will be a pretty, big name out there for some people to go after. Tim, I didn't write this question down for you, but I'm sure it's an opinion question. I'm sure you'll be able to answer it pretty easily. Are there any guys on this roster for Ohio State that you're just like, oh my gosh, please no, please do not, go after this guy, whether young guys or guys who have proven themselves so far this season? Are there any guys like that for you that you're just like, oh my gosh, please don't take him. We really need him to stay?
Yeah, it would be Bruce Thornton, number one. He would be the only one in that top tier. Roddy Gale has shown some really poor stretches of play this season where he struggled with turnovers and just not looking like a Division I basketball player at times with this decision making. Felix Okpara, very good rim protector. I think Wisconsin would love a guy like Felix Okpara, given that Nolan Winter is 6'11", has 0 blocks in his entire career. So that would be huge, I think, for Wisconsin. But I think far and away it would be Bruce Thornton. And then got to remember, Ohio State has had now 2 top 8 recruiting classes in a row. So that freshman class where Tayson Chapman has gotten no playing time so far this season. Scotty Middleton was suspended for a game. Even Austin Parks could be a player who could portal out as well, although I don't really expect that. But even that freshman class, there's going to be some players who are going to say, I didn't get my playing time this year. I committed to a coach. That coach is gone. I have nothing keeping me here in Columbus, so I'm going to take my talents elsewhere. So I think the number one player would be Bruce Thornton, but there's going to be plenty who are lining up.
That's crazy to think about. Oh, go ahead.
I do know that Izzo recruited Devin Royal pretty hard too. He was in, I can't remember if it was his top 3 or top 5 or whatever, but Michigan State was definitely in the mix for him late. So wouldn't surprise me to see them take a look at him too.
Gosh darn it, Anthony. That was the guy I was going to say that I really like the potential that Devin Royal has. And I think that he's a player that, if he sticks around, the new coach who comes in could really do something with him. But, if Tom Izzo is calling your name, it's kind of hard to say no to Tom Izzo. So thanks for listening to the Big Ten Huddle. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If this was your first time listening, we are the Big Ten Huddle. We cover all things Big Ten football and basketball. We have a long episode every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, all at 9 o'clock. So come in, check us out, get in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. We would love to have you join us and learn more about the Big Ten.